to avoid going to hell? Pretty much it was fire insurance. I was just a youth. I knew nothing about being a Christian other than what I knew was very confusing. So I went to church as a youth with some friends, and the altar call had a question that I did understand, and that was, if I died tonight, did I know that I would go to heaven? And the answer was no. And I had done so many things wrong at that point. As just a little youth, and my family was a mess. I was scared that if I died, I would go to hell. So I walked the aisle that night for fire insurance so that I wouldn't go to hell, and began my journey with Christ, as many of us do, just a little fire insurance. So, in and out over the years, I did feel his presence in my life, but I did nothing to nurture that relationship until years later when I came back around and I thought, well, I really need God. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to earn his hand on my life. I'm going to earn his favor. I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to do all the right things. I'm going to be a great Christian. And guess what? I was pretty much not a great Christian. I did some right things, I did some wrong things, but trying to earn and perform and run on the hamster wheel to get to the next day left me feeling empty, alone, most of the time invisible, and like God didn't see me because things weren't really working for me like I thought they would. So my faith was in and out, it was up and down. I could feel that God was with me. I knew his presence was vast in the world, but I was lost, not as much as before I was saved, but I had no sense of purpose or direction for my life. And years later, a pastor, I remember the sermon, I don't remember his name, but I'll never forget that he said, "Do you know that God loves you?" See, I knew God loved me when I was doing lovable things, but I didn't think that he loved me when I wasn't, which was more often than not. But he asked the question to the congregation in the sermon that day, do you know God loves you? Because if you don't, the Bible won't make sense, your prayers won't make sense, your faith has no foundation on which to build. And I had been building my faith on a very rocky foundation because I didn't really believe God loved me. But when he asked that question, he said, if you don't believe it, you got to go back where you started. You got to go back to where you started in your faith. So I began to think about, how do I go back to that point of salvation and begin to build on the fact that God loves me? Not only that God loves me, but that God created me to have a plan and a purpose for my life. And I've been doing that ever since. So, if you don't believe God loves you, then your faith's not going to really make sense to you. And you're going to feel like, what am I doing wrong a lot of the times? If you don't feel like God has a plan and a purpose for your life, you're going to feel like, what I'm just running in circles. And that's going to feel like you're running for no good reason. And you're going to be tired, you're going to be exhausted, and you're going to have hamster head. So, as you begin 2025, start with stop. If you're a Christian, go back to your foundation, because if things aren't making sense, your foundation isn't as solid as it needs to be. God does love you. Find scriptures that say that. God does have a plan and a purpose for your life. Find scriptures that say that, because otherwise, things aren't going to make sense and you're not going to feel like you're working towards something that really matters. And we all want our life to matter. So, welcome to week 1 of No Hamsters in Heaven. This is 52 weeks of devotions, and today is week 1. It's a very simple start with stop. Go back to your foundation if you need to, and begin your life of faith so that you are building on something that really matters. God loves you. He has a plan for you. And if that isn't a reason to get up every day, I don't know what is. Thank you for watching. I'll be back next week for week 2 of No Hamsters in Heaven. Have a great weekend, everybody.